What's up, y'all? Welcome to Conversation Piece with Patrick Armstrong. I am the titular Patrick, and this is a show where we talk about the missing pieces of the conversations we're already having. Shout out to all of our returning listeners, and a high five and hello to everybody joining us for the very first time. It is the last episode of 2023, our holiday spectacular and best of, and I am joined by two of my good friends, two of my very dear friends, and I'm going to introduce them in just a second. But I'm really excited for this episode to come out. We've had lots of incredible conversations this year, and this one is going to be the cherry on top of the conversational pie that was this show in 2023. It's the first full year of the pod. This particular one crossed that milestone in October, but really felt like we hit our stride in May. So it's almost like we're not even a year old yet. And there are lots more things to come in 2024. I'm very excited for it. And just a quick heads up, I will be back with another episode to kick off the new year next Tuesday. There might be a guest, there might not. I'm not 100% sure yet, but we are going to make it happen, and it's going to be great. All right. So, because this is the last episode of the year, a holiday spectacular, and a best ofs episode based on your votes, I thought it was only fitting that I brought on some special guests to help me ring in this special occasion. It is my privilege and honor to welcome two of my very dear friends, Leah Burns and Erik Kemp, to the show. What's up, y'all?
Hi.
You can't just wave. They're not going to see you.
Hello,
if they're watching
on
everybody.
YouTube, if they're watching on YouTube, they'll see.
Okay. Oh, okay. That makes
I'm
sense.
going to cut the wave out,
Two
actually.
people watch it on YouTube, though. So
Whoa,
I'm just waving to those two.
there is maybe five.
Maybe five.
Depends on the episode. A lot of people watched the last episode. How are you guys doing?
I'm good. On a holiday break from the office. So I love it.
Doing okay. I'm took a 2-week vacation out back to Colorado to visit my family. So I am actually in the old parents' basement.
Is that where your bedroom was when you were a kid?
Not the whole time. It was upstairs, and then I was like, I want more room. And then they moved me down to the basement, and that's where I'm at right now.
Did you feel really cool when you moved down to the basement? Like, do you feel like you leveled up in your maturity?
Oh, yeah. And then when I was in my 20s and I had to move back in, I was like, oh, this is bad.
Oh, no.
This is bad. Now I'm living that stereotype of, oh, yeah, I'm living in my parents' basement.
I never thought about it that way.
Those are my roommates.
I never
They
thought
do my
about it
laundry
that way.
sometimes.
I lived in the basement. I've had a room in the basement for a little bit. And one time I had the only time I ever had a party and hosted one in high school, we were down in the basement. And my mom brought
Classic.
pickles with ham wrapped around them, and then tortilla shells and mayo. I don't know what those are called, but that's what it was. And like people were like drinking down there and stuff, and I was just trying to be cool. I'm like, Mom, don't come down here with those. I'm like, do not come back down here again.
My
Yeah, I'm trying to fit in. So it was very funny.
Man,
Leah, have you ever lived in the basement?
I was just about to say, that's awesome that you guys have basements, because I live in the South, and that is something that like a lot of homes in the South do not have. We pretty much just like store things in our attic. So I honestly don't think I've ever been in a basement.
Never been in a basement.
Yeah, I can only just like imagine, instead of going up, just going down into like the sunken below. Because what I think of a basement is not like the nice like white wall that I see Erik in front of. I feel like it's dingy and there are cobwebs, and
I feel like that's the YA version of a basement. The young adult version of a basement, the cobwebs. Actually, there were cobwebs always in the stairwell to go down to the basement.
Same. I mean, if I wasn't in the finished room, there would be a bunch of unfinished concrete and like cat litter spread everywhere. Like it's just, yeah. I mean, that's the reality outside of this room.
Is there a reason that you don't have basements in the South? Is it like a flood thing?
Yeah.
I feel like Arkansas is far enough away, or no? Close to
Yeah,
water.
We are. I feel like it is. I really don't know. I've just been told all my life that up north there are basements, and down south we just have attics or like sheds, which I'm sure you guys have sheds and stuff too. But
have a shed
no basements.
Or had a shed.
I feel like the only time I've been underground is like a storm shelter.
I mean, storm shelters are kind of like basements, aren't they?
Yeah, they're basically basements.
Yeah, not a lot of people always have them though, but yeah, they're not sometimes like attached to your home. Oddly enough, sometimes you have to go out into the elements to get into the storm shelter.
That's interesting to me.
Good luck.
Good luck. This is making me think of like movies where there's a tornado and somebody's like just booking it for the shelter. But I feel like it's always connected to the house. I feel like ones that are disconnected are like bomb shelters.
Good point.
Yeah. Not these that I've been around.
Where it's like now it's like, would you rather go out in a tornado or rather go out with a bomb about to be dropped on you?
That's true. I feel like the bomb shelter would protect you from both bomb and tornado, though.
Is this the missing piece of conversation that we're
I think so, yes. This has been the Basements and Bomb Shelters segment of the show, sponsored by you, the listener. So thank you for supporting the show so we can have these wonderful conversations about basements and storm shelters or bomb shelters or some
and they are
form of shelter.
probably saying, wrap it up. No one cares about these.
We really haven't been talking about it that long. And it's kind of interesting. That is a missing piece of conversation of basement and shelter conversations that we're not having. Is it a bomb shelter?
A southern and a northern difference.
Is it connected to my house?
From these conversations before.
That's true. We should probably just go ahead and shelter this conversation for now. Okay. And we can come back to it at the end of the show. Okay, so I'm super excited to be here, like I said, with my very good friends. Have met both of them in person now, finally. We're coming in from different areas of the country, of America, because we're in America. And I'm trying to think. I think I met you both at the same time. Wait, no.
No way.
Yes?
I don't think so.
Carrollton.
Okay, you were there. Yeah. Okay, I was like,
that's how
Erik
I met
was
Erik,
there, right? And I'm like picturing Erik driving me around, and I'm like, okay, he had to have been there. So met at our Janchi Show 2nd year anniversary in person for finally. But have been big fans of you both prior to that moment. I don't know how I came across Leah's stuff. I know that we got connected through the Janchi Show, Kemp, me and you, and you had been a fan of the show and had met Nathan in the airport randomly. And then
met at a dinner party, actually.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what it was. But then you've just been my ride or die every time that I've been out to LA since over these last few years. And just been a really incredible person. So I appreciate you for that. Leah, I don't know. I feel like we just connected somehow via Instagram, and it was probably a book-related thing.
Yes, you are absolutely right. I started my Bookstagram that I barely even use now. I just use it kind of as a, like what the kids call a Finsta, like a fake Instagram. I just put nonsense on there, really. And I think I was like posting about maybe like being an Asian adoptee. Probably. That's probably how you found it. And I remember you being like, oh, I'm a Korean adoptee. Can't wait to follow along on your readings. And because that's how I imagined what your voice was, because I'd never listened to the podcast prior. Yeah. And so then I creeped on your Instagram and was like, who is this guy? And then saw that you had a podcast, and I listened to like maybe an episode or two, and I was like, well, that's cool. And then I didn't listen to any other episodes.
Nice.
That was that in true fashion. And then I guess we just started like befriending each other as you do on the internet.
Yeah.
And you guys said that y'all were coming to Dallas, and I said, I barely know this man. I don't really know KJ or Nathan either. I'm going to show up, and it'll be great. And it was not weird at all. And I had such a great time. And it was like it was probably one of the most extroverted things I've ever done. And
you met us at the same time I had met Erik, I believe, in that dinner at the bar or the fried chicken spot.
Yes,
you just
Erik had just come
rolled up. Yeah.
Yeah. Patrick and I met in the parking lot of the hotel that everyone was staying at. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the guy who I've been chatting with and in the parking lot. And that was
there
that.
It was.
Were you glad that like the face matched the picture on Instagram? Like you weren't like getting catfished by some podcaster?
No. I had like
maybe out in Dallas, we're doing a podcast.
Well, so yeah, after I told a lot of my friends like what I was doing, they were like, you're doing what? With who? And you've never met them? And I said, yeah, but don't worry. I've like done my due diligence because I grew up in the age where all of like the teachers and the parents in your lives are like, don't trust anyone on the internet. Don't give them out your first name. Don't give them out your middle name. Don't give them out your last name. But they're great guys. They are who they are off the pod as they are on the pod. So it worked out. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And even if like they were weirdos, I had a backup. I was just gonna dip. But it did
just
not
a casual 8-hour drive back to Arkansas, right? Or however long it took.
It was like 5.
That's not too bad, but it is a lot.
Yeah.
A lot for a few strangers. That's for sure.
Yes, but
we appreciate it.
I did the research, so you guys were not. I knew you guys most likely were not weirdos.
Well, I appreciate you doing the due diligence on that. And then we all got to hang out again in LA this past year, which was a great time. For our 3-year anniversary of the Janchi Show, Erik gave us a very heartfelt intro. And I was just, for some reason, listening to that episode. And I was listening to that and I was like, oh, man, dude, you're so nice. You're so nice.
So it was so off the cuff. I kept asking you guys like, hey, do you want me to prepare a speech? Do you guys want me to prepare something really nice? And it's like, nah, just wing it. And I'm like, really? In front of all these people? There's like 150 of us.
You did a great job.
Yeah, you gave a great speech.
It was really
I felt
touching.
like I was like conducting a wedding. I was like, we're all gathered here today.
You did an amazing officiating job of our wedding.
You.
Of our Janchi wedding.
Janchi wedding.
Hey, celebration.
I appreciate it. It was. Celebration, banquet, feast. Oh, I have a really great clip coming out tomorrow for the show. Anyways, okay. So before we move any further into all of these random talks and our top 5 episodes, for folks who are listening right now or watching this on YouTube who may not know who each of you are, do you mind just sharing a little bit more about yourselves?
Did I start, Leah?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Erik Kemp, and I am a Korean adoptee who grew up in Denver, Colorado for most of his life and now lives in Los Angeles, California. And spent a lot of time in radio and a myriad of different jobs, trying on a bunch of different hats. And most recently, I'll be starting my own podcast here soon. That's just going to be like kind of a personal journal. So thank you for the, I guess, the finger applause. I don't know what to call that.
The snaps.
the poetry snaps.
Snap?
Yeah. Okay.
The finger
I don't know
applause.
what to make of it. I don't know what to make of it. It'll be a constant evolution of my ramblings, my thoughts, my feelings. So, if you enjoy kind of our conversations here today and enjoy Patrick and Leah, and then hopefully you can follow me as well. So,
if they enjoy us, they'll follow you.
Maybe.
That's what I was thinking.
I don't know.
Wow, I hope they enjoy me.
I hope they enjoy you, and then they follow you because they enjoy you. Oh,
that's automatic.
Okay. All right, my bad. I should have known that.
In any case, just a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be speaking with both of you. I think we've already gushed over each other enough of how we met, how we continue to interact with each other, and just once again, always great to meet up with both of you.
It's going to be a fun night. It's going to be a fun night. Leah, before you go, I just wanted to note that before we got on mic, we were talking about, is it okay to burp? And I did not move out of frame or turn away very much and just did what
I'm not going to lie. I watched you.
But I forgot. I was just like, and then that made me think of it that we were talking about that. So, Leah, who are you and how are you?
Who am I? That's a good question. I'm still figuring it out. But for now, I'm Leah Burns. I am a Chinese transracial adoptee, and I grew up in Central Arkansas, where I am still located. And I grew up in a lot of white spaces. Grew up in a really white flight town, similar to you guys. And it probably wasn't until high school or college that I realized, oh, I think I identify as an adoptee, as an identity. And I kind of skirted around other internet adoptee spaces, but never, put 2 feet in the door. Was just peering through the door. And so it's been great. Exactly. Just searching, just like how Erik, for those who are not watching the video on YouTube, you may or may not be missing out. We'll see. To be determined. But yeah, it's been great jumping into this adoptee community. And like we said earlier, befriending Patrick and meeting Erik and meeting all these other Asian adoptees.
Love meeting Asian adoptees. It is a good time, and I've been very fortunate and lucky to meet both of you. We're also Hot Ones comrades. I kind of forgot. Shout out to Hannah for putting us together. Hannah Lee for putting us together for that.
Shout out to Hannah.
And
my mom still talks about that, actually.
I have people that bring it up from time to time as well.
That's the only thing I'm known from.
That's the only thing? I don't think that's
the only
true.
thing.
I would. You were just Anyways, I would like to continue doing that. We just got to find a time to get us all back together to do that because that was fun. I should have. If I was thinking far enough ahead, I would have made it happen on this show. That would have been fun. Do a top 5 countdown as we do the top 5 hottest sauces.
Ooh.
Oh man.
Next year.
That last dab.
Next holiday spectacular for sure. Well, thank you for sharing. And as we move towards the top 5 countdown for today, I wanted to first just kind of lead into it, getting to know you a little bit more, and ask, just some fun questions that I was thinking about as we were getting ready to record this. And then we'll move into the top 5. Okay, so first question. This one's for both of you. What do you normally do for your winter holiday?
I am such a homebody. So if I can be rotting on the couch or in my bed, I am doing it.
Did you say rotting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Just sitting
just
there, laying
becoming
there.
rotten.
Yeah,
the act
basically.
of becoming rotten. Okay.
Yes.
To rot.
Not being productive at all. Ignoring all of the responsibilities that I can. And then, of course, spending time with my mom because it's the holidays. But other than that, homebody as much as possible.
I like it.
So RIB for you then. Rotting in bed for you.
The old RIB.
Oh, RIB.
Rib.
What's Leah doing? She's ribbed. Rotting in bed. Whatever the other BED is. Oh, yeah, that actually does work there. Rotting in bed.
It does work.
Yeah.
I'm a big movie guy, so I always watch all the Christmas movies as much as I can, all the holiday movies. So, which includes Die Hard, by the way. But and speaking of that, I always kind of try to find new ones as well. I'm not big on the Hallmark ones, but in more recent years, one of my favorite is Jimmy O Yang and Nina Dobrev in Love Hard.
That was
really
cute.
Yeah, it was very cute. It was very cute, and it's something that I just kind of do. I watch, Home Alone, or I'll watch Elf, which actually is an adoptee story when you come to think of it. There's just kind of I've been kind of disenfranchised by the Christmas and the commercialism of it, but the movies still, it's like the movies and the music still kind of get to me. So I guess I'm still a sucker in that regard. But much like Leah, I spend time with family. I'm not, despite living in Colorado nearly my entire life, I don't go skiing or snowboarding. I didn't have that luxury. But yeah, it's mostly just watching movies and holiday specials.
Movie that you have to have on every year that you make sure you can't miss.
Oh, it's a Wonderful Life, no doubt.
Not what I thought you were going to say. That
Not
actually,
me either.
though, that does make sense. That you are like a kind of a
Life.
classics guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's your jam.
It is my jam. I love it. Old Jimmy Stewart. You just don't.
Nice.
I'm not gonna do a Jimmy Stewart impression.
You wanted to so bad.
Yeah,
you wanted to so bad.
He can edit it out if you don't like it in the end.
Yes.
Mr. Potter, you can't do that to the nice people of Bedford Falls. How dare you? Oh, Zuzu's pedals.
That wasn't bad.
Yeah, thanks.
That wasn't bad.
Erik, what is the best movie that you've seen this year?
Ooh, this year? Gosh, I mean, that's so tough. That's such a tough question. I don't know, because I've seen a bunch.
Patrick, do you have one off the cuff?
So it's not a movie, but it's a series on HBO or on Max that came out this year. It's called Scavenger's Reign. It's like an animated series, out of this world, like sci-fi series, sci-fi horror kind of. I was just randomly stumbled across it when I was looking for something to watch one night and just binged the whole thing. It was really fantastic.
Have you guys seen Blue Eye Samurai on Netflix?
That is on my list to watch. Yeah.
Dude, it's got everything that I absolutely hate and cannot stand. But boy, I binged it. Sorry to the audio.
You're good.
Wait,
what do you hate
watched
and
it,
cannot
you
stand?
guys. I don't really like violence. I don't really like sexualization of women. I don't really like when there's like prostitution involved, even though it unfortunately fit the time and the setting of the story. What else do I not like? Those are like the top 3 that I don't really like, but oh my goodness, it was so freaking compelling. I watched most of it in one night, and maybe there are like 6 episodes or so. So that was like 6 hours, which I guess isn't really a big deal because people binge watch all the time. But for it to be a subject matter that I usually am not interested in, it was just so good, I thought. So would recommend.
I like it. I'm here for it.
What a great pitch, right?
That was a good pitch.
That's actually a great pitch, yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch it now. Okay. So your new favorite musical artist of 2023. Somebody that you discovered or came across this year. They don't have to have just come out this year.
Ooh. So as I was getting into, because I remember you were talking about K-pop on the Janchi Show and how it's been a very difficult point of entry to find be resonating with that. And I'm not saying that because we're Korean we have to like K-pop all of a sudden because it's super popular, but I had to find my entry point, and so I started looking into more of Korean indie music. And then I got into a little bit more of folk music, and there's this band called Leenalchi, which does traditional Korean folktale storytelling and singing with that really folksy vibrato that's kind of off pitch, but then they layer it over some really kind of funky indie rock vibes, and I dig the hell out of it. It's great. So if you're ever in a weird mood and you want to listen to some weird music, put on some Leenalchi.
Leenalchi.
Yeah, Leenalchi.
All right, I'm going to have to check that out. I like the sound of that. What about you,
funky.
Leah?
I love it.
Well, I really wanted to say Taylor Swift.
I know. That's why I said I kept it to that you discovered this year.
New to me, I actually just started listening to Blackpink while Erik was talking about K-pop. Even though they've like been around, obviously, I just have not really like been into K-pop. But I really went hard. They were like my second or third like top artist on Spotify. And then Patrick actually introduced me to Leon Lawrence, who I believe is a Chinese English singer. Yes. And he specifically said, she gives me Taylor Swift vibes. So eventually I checked her out, and I do like her music. It is like more chill.
Yeah, like a chill Taylor Swift, kind of. I don't know. Like I felt like it was, if people like Taylor Swift, that they would probably like her music, even though it's not the same.
Right.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to, fingers crossed, get her to come on the show in 2024.
Cool.
That's one of my big swing for the fences. She said she probably wouldn't be able to, but she would ask. So it's like, all right, that's awesome. Cool. Good enough.
Hey, you got to shoot that professional shot.
Yeah, I got some big swings I'm taking next year, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I like all of those. Blackpink, great. Leenalchi. Yeah. Got to check it out. Taylor Swift doing her thing. All right, those are good answers. All right, next one. One thing that you worked on in 2023.
I think I worked on, and actually you guys talked about it. You actually talked about it on Conversation Piece with one of your guests. I'm actually spacing the name right now, but being encouragement. So I've talked about, like, I think when people ask for advice, or they're asking for, a caring ear or a listening ear, and then sometimes we kind of jump into it and immediately just try to say, well, you should do this, or like do this to fix that, and it's kind of like this knee-jerk reaction to what they're doing. And instead I've taken a step back to really say, well, I encourage you to kind of do this, rather than like have it be such a forceful type of interaction. It's more just an encouragement. And so it's a lot more diplomatic, I thought, in that kind of language and rhetoric. So that's something that I've been actively doing, is trying to be more encouraging, rather than telling or doing, or forcefully telling somebody to do something.
I like that. I think it's the thing that we can all work on, especially not forcing somebody to do something that they might not be ready to do, but being encouraging. Yeah. I think that's good. And that was encouraging. That was Amy Placharzik, who we talked about that in Nam.
She said she was an encouragement girl.
Yep, encouragement girl. Yes. Thank you for listening to the episodes. That's what this tells me. I have two. I knew I had the two right people on for this. Should have not said that. What about you, Leah? One thing that you've worked on, or you were working on in 2024? Or no, in 2023.
Seeing into the future.
I am a little bit.
My notepad fell. You can edit that out. What have I been working on? Probably listening to other adoptee voices, as great as, the Janchi and the Conversation Piece Patrick is. I have been trying to find other like Chinese adoptee voices.
Good.
Because I feel like it is not as simple as like a quick little Google search. You kind of have to like really dig deeper. And so, just trying to find other Chinese adoptee voices out there and listen to their perspectives, and maybe from afar befriend virtually.
That's the nice thing about virtual. You can friend from afar.
Yes.
And then you can drive like 6 hours to go visit.
Yeah, then you can be like, haven't met you, but we'll come see you. You have a good podcast.
Thanks for not murdering me.
Thanks for letting me get on here
live.
That's
the baseline. Oh my goodness.
That is hilarious. No, I think that's great. That's what you should be doing, everybody. Like, you should be always constantly seeking out other voices. Don't listen to me. Listen to me now, but don't listen to me all the time. Once a week is fine. and then fill your week with other people's. And pick my show versus my other show. Pick this show right now. We don't need any more support on the other show. Pick this show.
I truly thought about texting y'all and saying we need to find a snack to eat at the end of this episode so we can compete with the Janchi guys.
Oh my God.
But I kind of thought that would be in bad taste. Yeah. So
I think they'd be okay, but secretly would be mad. That would be hilarious though. Okay. So speaking of seeing into the future, yes, my next question is, what is one thing you're going to be working on in 2024?
Yeah, I think, which I guess if I'm saying this and it's being recorded, everyone can hold me accountable. But I think I'm going to go back to therapy. Sorry, that was like a hard launch. But I think I'm going to go back into therapy.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Just ready to go back?
Mm-hmm,
break over?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
That's up.
You know you have my support, and it sounds like you have Erik's support as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heck
yeah. And actually, that's kind of right where I was kind of going to go with is my health. So as I get older, I'm encountering a lot of issues and maybe stuff genetically that I didn't know about. And I got to just take care of that. So health being number one, especially as I'm getting older and my body's just not what it used to be. So yeah, definitely health.
I'm here for it. I'm also focused on my health, continuing mental health, and also my physical health. And I got to do it in 2 months because then I'm going to have a baby and I need to focus on their health and not my own health. So
absolutely, yeah.
Yay,
I should have started much sooner.
You got to take care of yourself before you can take care of that baby. So
that's true. I'm going to be like, baby, I don't have time for your cries. I got to eat better.
I got to go shoot some hoops, okay?
Go
Daddy got a ball. Daddy got a ball.
Now we know that is not the kind of partner Patrick is.
Yeah, I totally
Emily
will just leave my
help.
shoes on the side, but we'll take care of the baby. Will not put my shoes away or my pajamas. We'll take care of baby.
Hey, speaking of your child, what books do you have for your kiddo?
Oh, great question. I would tell you all of them if we were upstairs and I could easily access the bookshelf. It's like one whole bookshelf of books, which I think is great. Shout out to all the family and people who bought books off of our registry. That's the thing that I contributed to the most was just books. I want as many books. I'm not selecting a single white authored book. I want just as many books as possible because we're going to get all those. I will say that Alicia, one of our supporters here, did send me some Tigerboom. No, different Alicia. Sent me a Tigerboom gift with 2 board books that are like Korean teaching because Katie is a Korean adoptee. So I really appreciated that gift. So I'm excited to have those.
That's
But yeah, we got a whole slew of stuff, which I'm really excited about.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
well,
I wish I could say.
I was selfishly asking so I knew what book to purchase for your child because I don't want to purchase a book you already have.
Yeah. Well, even if that happens, I won't tell you, and then I'll gift it to a friend who has a baby who needs that book.
Very thoughtful.
Because I'll keep yours, and then I'll gift the one that we got originally.
Regifting baby books. That's a thing.
I'm not going to lie. Whenever I gift a baby book to a baby, I literally write in that book so those parents will not regift it.
Nice. That's actually really smart.
That is
to
smart.
be honest.
That's great.
I wonder how many regifted books have just a cutout section in the first place.
I don't want to think about it.
All right. Well, here's to our continued and ongoing health journeys in 2024. I'm proud to be on it with you both. It's going to be good. It's going to be good for all of us. And to wrap up this little portion, I have one individual question for each of you. Oof. So I'm going to start with Leah. Leah, what is the most impactful book you read in 2023?
Oh, this year. Gosh, I actually only read 32 books this year. And I can't even think. Oh, sorry.
Only.
I should have looked at my list. I should have known you were going to ask. I read half of You Should Be Grateful by Angela Tucker. And it was the half that I did read. Oops, because I'm a mood reader. Was so good. And I just love reading adoptee authored books because it's just so validating. And even though you get all of the validation from all of these other adoptees, like when you go out and seek it out, it's just still, it just kind of feels like the first time. And you're like, wow, someone else understands what it's like.
Yeah.
So for now, I would say You Should Be Grateful.
I love that. That's a great answer. Shout out Angela Tucker. Great book. Go get it at your local bookstore if you can. And thank you for that answer. All right, Erik. It took me a minute to think of, I had like multiple different questions for you. But in light of even today's news, I'm definitely going to ask you this question. It was specifically about Shohei Ohtani signing with the Dodgers. However, we've just found out today that his Japanese teammate, his Team Japan
Yamamoto,
just signed with the Dodgers as well. So my question was originally, will Shohei succeed with the Dodgers, as in win a World Series? But now I want to ask, do you think the Dodgers are going to win the World Series in 2024?
In 2024, if they don't win the World Series, that is going to be an utter disappointment. You just spent $1 billion between two players, and one of which deferred $680 million of those dollars, to the later part of his career. Which, I mean, gosh, let the next ownership figure that out. But honestly, I think they got a tough road ahead of them. Granted, Juan Soto went to the Yankees, so the division in the NL West is going to be a little bit, less competitive. I mean, you can steamroll over the Rockies, my Rockies. The Diamondbacks have a nice young squad. The Giants actually just signed a Korean baseball player, the best KBO hitter that we've seen, for, it was like $180 million. But the Giants versus Dodgers is always kind of like a 50-50 throughout the season. I know Leah's just enjoying all this sports talk. But honestly, I do think the Dodgers win the World Series, and actually I think they win multiple, so long as they can keep bringing in the talent, and Andrew Friedman's done a wonderful job in assembling this team. Now it's up to Dave Roberts to manage the ongoing pressure of fulfilling that destiny of winning the World Series.
I can 100%
I second everything he says.
Yes. See, but I would third it, and only because you sound like a person who knows what they're talking about in your sports radio voice. So I like hear you on the radio right now or on ESPN talking, and I'm like, yes, I agree with him. Wait, real quick, are you a Dodgers fan?
I'm a begrudging, I through obligation, I'm a begrudging Rockies fan. But growing up, actually, when the Dodgers would come to town, Chan-Ho Park being the first South Korean player to play over here, South Korean born, I should say. That was huge as far as just representation, seeing somebody that looks like me or vaguely. He was very tall, and handsome, not me. But he was, but seeing him and playing and like that, and I always gravitate towards LA, and I love the Dodgers, the red, white, and blue. I mean, it was all there. But Rockies, like I grew up watching them. They're my hometown team. But living in LA now, I can see why people love the Dodgers. People love them. They're a quality organization. And the Rockies are just piss poor. I hate the ownership. I hate what they did to Arenado. I just don't. Oh gosh, they're just the dumpster fire that won't stop. Just lighting, feeding the fire. Just
feeding
worse.
The fire.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I understand that as a Cubs fan. I understand all of that pain.
Yeah.
As Leah mouthed, drama. A lot of drama going on over there. So I feel you. But I appreciate that. And I'm serious. I think we should start a sports podcast.
How many other podcasts can you commit yourself to?
Well, I got one coming out next year. So 3 at least, with one that I'm editing
this into existence.
4. So technically, it's a lot.
There. Man,
well, actually, I do 3 already, because I also do Conversation Notes, which is the companion podcast to this show.
Comes out on Wednesdays, right?
Comes out on Wednesdays, but this last week's was the last one because this just came out on Wednesday. This is Wednesday right now. So, woo.
Hump day.
All right. We're on a hump day going over the hump from 23 to 24. Actually, yeah. No, wait, that's right. That's coming up this weekend. Well, thank you for participating in my section titled LB plus EK questions. That's what the title of the segment. LB plus EK questions equals great answers and fun.
Sexiest title ever.
That's how that equation works. So thank you for sharing. Thank you. I'm going to do some cheers right here. And now we're going to move on because I feel like our audience has a good feel for who you are, both of you as individuals, as people. We learned a lot in the last 40 minutes of chatting. We learned about basements. We learned about books. We learned about what we do for the holidays. I'm kind of already forgetting what we talked about at the beginning of those questions because I'm thinking about the basements now. I'm back to the basements, but we're not going to go back to the basements yet. We're going to go into the top 5.
Charge.
I'm not going to put any of these sound effects in. I'm going to find different ones, I think. But all right, everyone, we have reached the climactic top 5 portion of this episode. Shout out to everybody who has listened throughout the year. Thank you to everybody who voted. It was a close race for the top 5. So without further ado, we are going to dive in and talk about the top 5 episodes that you, the listeners, have chosen for your favorites of 2023. Starting off with the 5th best episode as voted on by you, the listeners, for 2023. And that episode is Lucy Sheen from September 18th as part of the BIPOC Adoptee conversation series. And I thought I really liked it. I was really happy that this one made it because I felt like this was the one that got the least amount of love when the series came out. And personally, it was my favorite conversation out of all the really incredible conversations I had with that series. This was the one that I walked away with, like, just, I don't know, just it was the one that was really impacted me, I felt like, the most, as much as everyone's had impacted me. And so I was glad to see this one make it on here. Again, that came out September 18th, so not too long ago. The BIPOC Adoptee series was the most listened to series of any of the ones that I ran this year.
Nice.
And it also led into a live event that I did in Portland with BIPOC adoptees where I did my conversation piece workshop for the first time. So shout out to BIPOC adoptees. Shout out to Liana and her whole team over there. And shout out to the listeners for voting this one in. Y'all, I want to hear your thoughts and takeaways from this episode. What did you think about this particular episode, either when you first heard it or if you've heard it on multiple viewings?
Heard it on multiple viewings.
Listen to it multiple times.
I'll start since I already kind of cut in. I thought this was one of the more intriguing ones, and of course, I'm biased being a BIPOC adoptee myself. And I thought the novelty, and I think why people voted, and I'm glad that they voted. But I think one of the novelty was that she came from a British background or a British kind of upbringing, but it still was a very Western experience. And so to have that kind of familiarity of the Western, the culturally and societal Western perspective, but coming from across the pond, I thought that was just so oddly refreshing and very intriguing. I love what she was talking about. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. I love what she was talking about when, especially as an older adoptee, not to, be ageist. It's just more, it's really refreshing when she was talking as an older adoptee saying, hey, we are past the stage of keep your head down and not making a fuss. I've been shouting that from the rooftops for the longest time, is that we are in a completely different generation, a completely different zeitgeist, and a completely different wave of where we should be taking these conversations, where we should be headed as a collective adoptee. So I really enjoyed that, hearing that. And then just kind of speaking more on like her as a person, she spoke with such clarity, and she was so pointed with her stance and logic. She covered such a breadth of adoptee issues that in such a relatively short time. So really enjoyed that. And I don't want to take up too much of the time, but yeah, I have more on her talking about media, adoptees and media, but I'd like to let Leah kind of share her thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I loved how she or both of y'all really talked about who can and who should tell adoptee stories, which is seems like a theme that people have been talking about forever with representation. And you guys even touched on Joyride and Oof. But I thought this was so interesting that she mentioned this show called One Child Show.
Yeah.
And I actually have watched it. And I kind of forgot about it until she mentioned it. But it came out in 2014. And in 2014, I was like a high school senior or a college freshman. And I had no idea that I see Erik doing the math. Yeah, I am 27. I did not have like the language or the knowledge of having like an adoptee identity, or even knowing like a Western view versus an Eastern view, or versus centering the adoptee's experience versus like the parents like holding the narrative and the positive adoption narrative and stuff. And so I think it would be interesting. I honestly don't think I would actually go back and rewatch the show, because I do remember watching it and kind of being incredibly freaked out by the subject matter.
Sure.
But I loved that she mentioned it, because it was probably one of the first adoptee narrative stories that I had ever seen, even if it was incredibly jarring.
Sure. Well, it's wild that you had watched that before. And it's interesting to think about sometimes when things get named, like movies or shows that are either indirectly or directly deal with adoption or adoptee issues, and being like, oh, I watched that. You're right.
Yeah, and the only reason why I did watch it is because the main character plays Cho Chang in the Harry Potter movies.
Yep. All right. Interesting. I don't know what that actor's name is, but
Katie Leung.
We have.
Oh, okay.
Not that anyone cares, but I knew it.
You knew it off the top of your head. A straight up Potterhead. That's hilarious. Well, I think it's a good segue. Erik, you said that you had some other thoughts about her comments about representation in media.
Well, yeah, I mean, living in LA and pursuing the film and television markets like I am, you start to have these conversations in which you're thinking about, where are we as adoptees being able to tell our stories within the broader media landscape. Podcasts like these. I recently met up with Liz Sargent, and she just had a short that was getting a lot of Oscar buzz. I mean, we're on the precipice of something really freaking exciting. Yeah. And but there are a lot of challenges and obstacles along the way, and I think Lucy Sheen was able to name them and very pinpoint them in ways that I thought were great. So speaking of kind of just the narratives that have already been out there on our behalf, was and something that was resonating with me was that everything is adjunct to the white hero. That hit me hard, because like everybody, like when I was growing up, I loved Indiana Jones, but like, and this is not an adoptee story, but well, I guess it kind of is, because Short Round from Temple of Doom, was, I love Ki Kwan, but like the point is that he was adjunct to the white hero. And I never wanted to be Short Round for Halloween. I wanted to be Indiana Jones, damn it. And like, that was the point that I think, where we start to have that narrative shift and start really thinking like, why am I not represented in a way that is where I get to be the hero, or I'm adjunct to them, or I'm the sidekick. there was a lot of other things like, one of the biggest thing, and it's going to be a ongoing theme, is funding. So follow the money. And she said something really I thought was just spot on, was trying to find funding for the unpopular narratives. I feel like a lot of times we're out here and we're trying to make, she mentioned also, the market feels like we try to make it palatable for the market. It's like, for what market? For the widespread market? Like, sorry that my narrative is not like, parallel to what your experience was for, the whatever the major demographic is. If it's 18 to 35 white males, then sorry that my experience isn't like theirs. And it just feels less like catering, like making it palatable, and more like pandering. So
sure.
I love that. I love what she was talking about, the subterfuge of adoption and adoption narratives that already exist. I thought that was just, oh my goodness, just that was, I think that was what drew me to that podcast and what stood out for me.
A lot of resonance for you in that conversation.
Absolutely.
I like it. And I think you kind of named a bunch of different things. I think you both did, but any thoughts on why you think the audience might have voted for this particular episode?
Because she was so succinct. I feel like Erik said, she is older than us. So I feel like she's had longer time to ruminate and to really say, the adoptees are not the ones who have a seat at the table, who are able to make these movies or get the funding. And then she also talked about, this is kind of diverting from the media representation, but she talked about a lot of her feelings of sadness about meeting other adoptees later on in life. And that made me reflect on, I'm probably going to mention this Carrollton weekend 2 years ago many times, but seriously, that was just a very personal, pivotal, kind of just healing moment in my life. And she was talking about how the internet just was not a thing and was not accessible because it was not created yet. And she just felt sad that she had only met these people at that certain point in time in 2018 or 2014 or something like that. And then y'all talked about the community of adoptees, of people saying, oh, wait, but do you know this X, Y, and Z adoptee? And even though the community might be quote unquote small, it's still not everyone knows every other Asian adoptee, basically.
I like it. Erik, anything to add?
No, I think, I shared my thoughts earlier on, I think the novelty of coming from across the pond, but still having kind of that very unique perspective on things. And it was just really refreshing. I think I've been stuck in spaces where, I shouldn't say stuck, but I've been in spaces more of the American perspective, and to hear it coming from a British one, I thought that was, and hearing similarities and also differences, I thought that was just really refreshing and something that I needed to hear that I didn't know I needed.
Yeah, I think that's why it was one of my favorite conversations coming out of that series, was just to both of your points. She was really succinct, and also because she's a little bit older than I am, she has this lived experience, a further experience, and particularly working in media, because we were there to talk about representation. I thought was really interesting because it encapsulated a fuller idea of the adoptee as not just being necessarily Asian, but how it kind of extends outward beyond, just one racial or ethnic group, to encompass all of us, and how we kind of can struggle with that. And that, she just touched on a lot of things that you don't necessarily hear in our conversations from that particular perspective in America versus coming from the UK. So really, really enjoyed that. Thank you for sharing your thoughts there on that episode. Your episode number 5, Lucy Sheen with the BIPOC Adoptee series. Make sure you go check that out. I'll have that linked in the show notes if you want to listen to it. But if you're listening, you probably already listened to it because that's why you voted for it. All right. Coming in at number 4, your number 4 episode for 2023 was Lillian Barkus for our National Adoptee Awareness Month series that came out on November 20th. I forgot to do this last time, but I'm going to read quickly the synopsis of the episode before we dive in. So yeah. On this week's episode, co-founder and CEO of Listen to Our Future, Lillian Barkus joins Patrick to talk about navigating loss as adoptees, from adoptive parents to first parents and more. Lillian shares about working through grief after losing her adoptive mother early in college, what it means to honor our ancestors, and why it's important for us to understand the traumas related to attachment and abandonment. She also discusses the amazing work Listen to Our Future is doing in the city, that city being Indianapolis. Y'all, what did you think about this episode? What were your thoughts and takeaways after listening?
I loved it. I actually have only listened to it once, and that was only when I found out it was number 4 in your most favorite listens, because I knew from the little clips and blurbs that I had seen that it surrounded talks of grief and losing a parent.
Mhm.
And I was adopted by a single white mom. And so obviously I have a lot of attachment toward her, or, maybe that weird inner child attachment deal because trauma. But basically I knew that it might be a bit too much. And so I waited until today to listen to it, but I loved it. I loved hearing about her organization, and something else that I know you love, being an Indianapolis resident.
Yep.
What do you guys call yourselves? What do you call yourselves?
Hoosiers. I call myself a
what
Boilermaker because I went to Purdue, but that's neither here nor there. It's generally Hoosier.
Not Indianans or
Yeah.
Indianites.
What's a Hoosier?
No.
Like, is
Someone
that a
who went to
thing?
IU? I don't know what a Hoosier is. That's
Oh.
a good question. All right, you keep talking, and I'm going to look it up.
Okay. I'll keep talking. But anyway, while she was talking about her organization, I kept thinking of, in Arkansas, we have this 18-year-old black mayor named Jalen Smith, and he is one of the youngest mayors in the U.S. right now. And he literally said, "Why should I have to go somewhere to be great when I can be great here?" And I just kept thinking about that quote while the two of you were talking about living in Indianapolis and trying to create more adoptee Asian spaces and just, living in Indy. And so that's something that I really admire and respect about you two. But I also loved what she had to say about intersectionality, and then pushing back against the positive adoption narrative. And just a moment, let me flip my notes page, because I'm telling you, I had a lot to say. Whenever she said that community is independent, I literally, my mind was just because I wholeheartedly agree, because for the longest time I feel like proximity really informed and made my friendships, because I always saw them either at school or at church or at work, and young adulthood is really the first time that I have decided to seek out other friendships in different spaces. And so when she said that community is independence, I thought, I guess it is. And here I am, also independenting and communitying.
I like it. I love that. Yeah, that's one of the things that I
yes.
loved about the conversation too, for sure.
I will stop there for now and let Erik go, because I still have more to say. But proceed,
Perfect.
Erik.
I love it. And actually, that's a perfect segue, because that was the first thing that I wrote down was community is independence. And I think, Patrick, you expanded on it, where it's you have these nuanced wants and needs for yourself, but you don't actually feel that freedom or independence to actually operate or even flourish those wants and needs until you actually get inside that community and feel safe within that community to do so. So I thought that was really, I think, one of the most poignant topics and that you guys touched upon. Something that I kind of like, my mind was blown, at the moment that Leah talks about is when she was talking about how she said, I'm changing the bloodline of my family line. And I was like, ooh, I like that. I like that. So in a way, she's honoring her cultural heritage and her cultural roots, but also being able to hold space and allow for her to acknowledge the family line that she has been adopted into. And granted, that's a privilege, and I think that's something that not every adoptee gets to have in their life. So I want to put that out there first as kind of just as a preface. But I thought, being able to reframe it in that regard gives you a lot of powerful language to work around with, and very empowering for, once again, the independence, right? And I think she also had some very simple ideological reminders and affirmations, like telling yourself it doesn't always have to feel this way. It doesn't have to be this way. And I think being able to keep telling yourself over and over again that it doesn't have to be this way, but why is it? And so for her to kind of reiterate those types of once again, I mean, maybe we don't have the vocabulary for it, but just those simple reminders that we can tell ourselves. And I also wrote down abandonment manifestations, but I'm not quite sure.
We talked about abandonment. That became a big subject of the episode.
Good.
For sure.
Yeah. And, I think, that was, I just wrote down abandonment manifestations. I think, I was just kind of nodding along the whole time. And much like yourself, Leah, I didn't listen to that one, admittedly. But I'm so freaking glad I did. I really
Me too.
am.
I like how you also wrote abandonment because I also wrote abandonment and then I said, period. Dang. Yeah.
I guess abandonment in so many different ways. I think there's the literal point of abandonment, right? But then abandonment of culture, abandonment of our partners, romantic partners. That you have to have one before you experience that. But I mean, there's abandonment of friends. I had a good friend of mine who I thought, was a good friend, and I don't know, maybe we still are, but they ghosted me. And I was just like, well, this sucks. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know what's going on with his life. And I thought we were good. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, we're not talking anymore. And that sucks. And that's something that I had to kind of reel back and say, like, okay, well, he's an adoptee too. And so I'm just trying to think of, maybe he's dealing with his own types of abandonment. Maybe he's protecting himself in some regard. So I think, abandonment kind of permeating throughout all of our intersecting identities and personalities and characteristics of who we are, is it being able to explore that through our adoptee identity, I think can help navigate our other relationships with abandonment.
Well, it's really like rooted in all of our stories,
right?
And it's like sits at the heart of it. And like she talks about, like in kind of similarly to you, she says, my parents got divorced, abandonment. My mom passed away, abandonment, like drawing these parallels to that. And like where some people feel grief in like a different way and maybe come upon or stumble upon abandonment as they grieve someone who passes, especially unexpectedly. I think we have already been dealing with it. It becomes compounding as opposed to just like a new discovery.
I think she said that she wishes her mom would have put her in therapy from like the get-go. And same though. But also Cam Lee Smalls, I want to say, posted like forever ago about how he believes that for adoptees, like the moment the child begins to miss and like their parent and be able to verbalize that is like the moment you should put them in therapy.
That makes sense.
And I was also thinking, wow, wish that was me, but it wasn't. Instead, I just had unspoken like stomach ache and couldn't verbalize, why do I feel this in my tummy?
Why am I feeling this intense, deep-pitted pain?
Yes.
Yeah. But, I think why people voted was just that very unique family dynamic that she had, right? Mom passed away at 22, divorced in 3rd grade. I mean, that unique family dynamic, I think, was very interesting to hear. And I think something that we don't hear too often within adoptee narratives. So I'm glad that she was able to share that story. And, I also love that she indirectly kind of admits that her journey and story is still a work in progress. Like we are still unfinished in what it is that we're trying to do out here in our work. And so, being incredibly self-aware, I thought she was also, and this is kind of more maybe aesthetic thing, but she was super relatable and like not even in an adoptee kind of way. So like, as she was just talking about her life, I thought she was just super relatable. And then, what I loved too is that she kind of turned it around on you as
she asked you a question.
What's your biggest fear? Right. And
that's a good point.
And Patrick, you also talked about kind of reclamation and what do I get to claim as mine?
Right.
And I thought all these topics mixed in right with her, unique family experience, and then of course, kind of amplifying that unique narrative and diasporic of the adoptee community was really, really refreshing.
Yeah,
Same.
I think people voted because of her vulnerability. Because like what Erik said, she was just very relatable, very much like, this is the story, this is how I am now, and I am like not done grieving because grieving is a forever process. And also just like purely biased, she's also, I'm pretty sure, a Chinese adoptee, right?
She is.
And she said that you two met because of an Atlanta spa shooting vigil, I believe so.
Yeah, it was like an Asian American visual for the Asian American community. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that was such a wild time in, I'm sure, your guys' lives too, but especially for me being an Asian American woman and not quite even having like fully immersed myself, I guess, into the community. So it was real interesting and comforting to see other Asian adoptees during that time like band together and have like community even via the internet.
Yeah.
And she seems to be really like growing around the grief versus being like consumed by it, which I guess really is all of us. Some days we grow around it and some days we just like wallow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what I loved most about the episode is just like her vulnerability and just like shit, like you said, he just tells her story, tells it how it is. And I think she's very, maybe not at peace with like who she is in her story, but like she's like literally modeling the process of what it looks like to claim those things and work through those things and do all of that. So yeah, that's Lillian Barkas for our National Adoptee Awareness Month episode or series of episodes that came out November 20th for your number 4 episode. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, y'all. We have 3 more episodes to get to. This next episode, episode 3, your episode 3, is our first non-adoptee of the countdown. And this episode is titled Mindfulness and Mental Health in the Workplace with Jamie Holland. And I'm going to read the synopsis real quick. On this week's episode of Conversation Piece, author and lifestyle guy Jamie Holland joins Patrick to discuss how we can be more mindful of our mental health in the workplace. Jamie shares about her journey with mindfulness and addressing her own mental health, why workplaces should invest in their employees' well-being, and how addressing our own mental health helps us help others. Thoughts, takeaways, feelings. What did you think of this episode?
You guys kind of touched upon thoughtfulness and kindness to ourselves and how that can extend out to others. I had I'll speak from personal experience that in the workplace itself, I was working a software job. I was like a implementation specialist, which is just pseudo talk for project manager, and they just don't want to pay you like one.
I was like, what does that mean?
Right. Any case, but I remembered that like there was a bunch of things that I couldn't name at the time, but I knew it was very frustrating, and I wasn't really paying too much thought and I wasn't being very kind to myself in that regard. I was just kind of stewing in anger, and it didn't manifest great. And I ended up, leaving that job and didn't want to be a part of that job anymore. And I think that's where it was tough to kind of confront that. And I think oftentimes as adoptees, like I'm kind of your type A people pleaser anyway. And so like I do that, but I do it in ways now that are a little bit more significant to I think the relationship rather than just who I am. And I do it in ways that don't fully like do it at my expense. Right. Cause like, I mean, Patrick, you talk about like, ride or die in LA where, I don't mind driving to pick up somebody from the airport. Like that shit sucks. And so like I get that pain. So I'm like, yeah, man, I mean, if I was out there, I put myself in your shoes. I was like, if I was out there, I'd love to have a buddy come pick me up and get to know the community a little bit more and drive around LA and check it out. So, I mean, that was nothing to me. Right. But there are times in my life where I've definitely put others' needs ahead of mine. And I think, extending that thoughtfulness and kindness was great and kind of, from yourself first, right? You got to take care of yourself first, do that. But she also mentioned something about practicing gratitude. And once again, as an adoptee, that's very tough. Ooh, that is very tough. That's kind of a hot topic, right? And being grateful and practicing gratitude. But, I think we have to find ways and avenues in our life to be grateful. And I think if we're just kind of wallowing the whole time, that's not going to serve anybody well, and certainly not ourselves. And then I was, she talked about the inner child, which I really loved. And, it's something that I'm very conflicted with, just kind of reeling back of who I was and who I am and what my inner child is saying to me right now or today or, 10 days from now and a year from now. But it was kind of great to hear specifically target that part of our identities as human beings and that kind of psyche. So I think she, in a way, tested a lot of how do I say this? Tested a lot of methodologies and thoughts that I had in my head, and in very great ways with conversation with you. So
I like that.
Yeah, it was a tough episode. It was a tough episode.
Okay, I appreciate you sharing that. What about you, Leah?
Oh my gosh, how do I follow that? All I said was investing in employee well-being. So support single parents in workplaces and society. I had a boss just recently tell me that like we spend so much of our lives at work and that we should really enjoy it. And I feel like employee resource groups are a great way to maybe get some more out of your workplace if you have that. I only recently, like in the past year recently, that's still recently, started somewhere that has employee resource groups. And I'm a part of the API group. But guys, have we ever met? Nope, I'm just on an email chain with these people.
How many emails?
Do what?
How many emails?
Only one.
All right, not very active, it sounds like. That's okay. It exists.
But at least I can say I'm a part of something.
Here for it.
But Jamie did say that you have to be ready for the help. Like, be willing to say, hey, I need help in this situation. And I really appreciated that for sure. Because you can't help yourself or someone else if they're like not ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. That's what I loved about the episode. Met Jamie at the bookstore. She was doing a book release for a workbook, a mindfulness workbook that she had put out, and we talked about in the episode. But I felt like that's what I took away a lot of was this idea of being able to take care of yourself first and knowing that that's okay. And then also kind of what you're talking about, Erik, like the idea of gratitude not being like divorcing my adoptee feelings with it, thinking about gratitude and like the other areas of my life that it can be and exist, and knowing that it's not invalidating, any other feelings that I have towards gratitude because I was adopted and because of stuff that happened because of that. That still all exists and lives in my body and my mind and my brain. And it's okay and possible to feel that gratitude to other things, when stuff happens.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for that. Cause I think, it is incredibly tough to kind of disassociate that from
it is
the kind of the narratives that we've been fed fed my entire life anyway. You mentioned the workbook, and that's something that I also wanted to kind of talk about why I think people voted was that you guys spoke you particularly, Patrick, actually spoke very highly of it. And I love the way that you talked about it because it sounded like this workbook really gave you sovereignty and like agency for yourself. And it didn't feel like, once again, encouragement, right? That it's not Jamie telling you to do these things, but rather here are some tools and resources for you to think about and methodologies and ideologies to think about that might help you through your current situation. You get to personalize on your own. And Leah, you I think you nailed it on the head, was that workplace culture affects everybody. I mean, and it's highly resonant for like all of those that aren't like solo entrepreneurs, and even those that have worked jobs in the past, like, and so, and also I think there's this kind of collective, I mean, everybody's talking about the quiet quitting, the nobody wants to work anymore, that kind of thing. And people are kind of just fed up with the lack of follow through. And that's something that she said that really resonated with me. And just once again, from an aesthetic point of view, I thought she was very bubbly and a very likable personality in general. And so I thought, well, good on the listeners to vote this one in. I thought it was very keen of them to do so.
Hell yeah.
She was also utilizing her local library.
Yep. Local library. That's why people voted for sure. Was just that local library usage for sure.
The local library flex. Hell yeah.
The local
Patrick,
library.
Did you get a
flex.
library card?
Anyways, that was your number 3. The episode that you voted
That is such a no. That is such a no.
Mindfulness and mental health in the workplace with Jamie Holland, that came out on July 10th. Also the earliest episode on the countdown. So shout out to everyone voted that in. There's a train that is going past our house right now. If you can hear that. I don't think you can. Can you hear it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, it's fine. It's in the background. No, I haven't got my library card yet. Just to follow up on that query that you left me there. All right. We've been going an hour and 20 minutes. We are up on top of, we are coming up on our top 2 episodes. And I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me. I've really appreciated your insights in the episodes. Stuff I'm going to take away and think about as I continue to invite people onto the show, think about the conversations we have. But for your number 2 episode, the episode that folks out there voted number 2, this is the only solo that made it on the countdown. And so I'm interested to hear what y'all thought about this one. This is The Burden of Responsibility and the End of November, a solo episode I released on November 27th as we were getting ready to enter this month. And the synopsis for this episode: on this week's episode of Conversation Piece, Patrick closes National Adoptee Awareness Month with a solo conversation about the burden of responsibility we feel regarding managing other people's feelings at the expense of our own. Hint, hint, it's an illusion. I want to talk about that. He also gives a recap of the November episode slate and talks about what to expect for December and early 2024. What did y'all think of this number 2 episode? I can't wait to hear.
I thought it was great because I think that the burden of responsibility and the thought that, oh my gosh, I have to educate my white mom on the racism that I experienced, so she'll know it's real. It's so real. Because I wonder, like, if I'm not doing it, who else will, basically. And I mean, ultimately, though, every day I do wonder, like, is it worth it? And I understand that, like, other adoptees might not be in a safe space that could lead to a brave space, which, spoiler, I kind of touched on our number one episode that we will talk about soon. So I do understand that there is like a degree or significant degree of privilege there with my relationship with her. One time I legitimately told Patrick, I think we were talking about me coming on a pod someday, and I said, I don't know about that. And then kind of here indirectly, here I am. But I did straight up say, I do not want to shit talk my mom. And Patrick basically said, well, you have to be honest with yourself. And I'm sure he said other profound things, but that is really the major thing that stuck with me. And I thought it was a great solo episode. And you touched on the workshop that you led, the virtual workshop with the other adoptees, which I was also there.
Leah's a big supporter of me, which I appreciate.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, and great tease for the top episode there, Leah. I see you. Man, I don't know why you're so hesitant to be on a podcast.
Yeah, you're a great podcast co-host.
Absolutely.
You're my co-host of the evening. If I didn't say that at the top of the episode, I think I just said very dear friends twice.
I'm fine with very dear friends. That's fine by me. Less pressure to be a host.
You're both doing great.
But I mean, Patrick, you kind of already touched upon this in the description, was the idea of an illusion, and I think it permeates beyond just the burden of responsibility of educating parents, friends, loved ones who are not adoptees, but it's beyond that, just that specific subject, and the concept, and even like the concept of an illusion is just it hits in a way that gives you something maybe a little bit more tangible to work around with, right? What is the illusion that I'm facing before me, right? What is this illusion that they told me to see, right? What is the illusion, right, that the media perpetuates about adoptees and our narratives, right? And I think you talked about this in a different podcast. Actually, I think it was one of the top 5 because it's pretty fresh on my mind. Is that are we forcing our way through that illusion? Are we accepting that illusion for what it is and coming to terms with that and coming to grips with that illusion, right? And just accepting it for what it is. Are we breaking through? Are we like dismantling this illusion, right? And so whether it be the burden and responsibility of educating, friends and loved ones, is it the illusion of adoption as, as a solution, the one all be all solution to things? Is that, what are we doing about that illusion? So I think the illusions within an adoptee's experience, I thought that's a topic that, dude, you got to explore that one. I mean, that alone, I think, is worthy of a whole podcast series you could do. The reason why I liked it, and I think why other people voted, was that I think what you did was it bridges and broaches a subject that affects both adoptees and adoptive parents. And that's something that I've been really trying to advocate more for, is that you have these tertiary kind of communities to adoptees, right? You have you have that triad, right? You have the first mother, you have the adoptive family, and you also have the adoptee themselves, of course. But that we have children of adoptees, right? We have family members of adoptees, we have friends of adoptees, and I feel like these what we're saying for a lot of adoptees, we're getting head nods, right? It's like, oh yeah, I've heard this, or like, yeah, I totally resonate with this. What I want is those like kind of curious head tilts from those in those tertiary communities, right? I want to, hear more about that. And I think you broached a topic that could help in being a point of entry for those communities. And I think you also provided a lot of methodologies and mental frameworks as tools for adoptees. But you did it from like a personal first person perspective, right? You never said like, this is the adoptee thing. This is the universal adoptee. But you framed it in ways that, right? And that doesn't exist.
Right.
Like you did it from a personal standpoint, which I really loved and appreciated. And then also too, dude, I mean, you're coming off the heels of like Murder's Row of amazing combos with adoptees. Like, I mean, November, for people that don't know, is National Adoptee Awareness Month. And so I think leading up to that podcast, and maybe I'm just talking out of my ass here, but like, I think leading up to that podcast, you were provided with some incredible language to grasp onto some very difficult concepts from some amazing people. So coming off the heels of that and then being able to reflect on all of that made out to be an amazing solo show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate both of your words there. And yeah, I had a great run of guests. Amy, as we mentioned before, Lillian, who made it in the top 5, and then Lauren Reese. I think sitting in person for those interviews was a big thing for me to like do for the first time for the show, but then also to really like work on the type of conversation that I want to have on the show going forward with other guests. And those conversations really did help me like figure out, you know, how I really wanted to approach a solo. And I really want to make sure I'm focusing on what's a missing piece. You know, like that's the whole point of the show. If I'm doing a solo, unlike something like this, or even like the episode with my wife, like I want to talk about, I really want to, you know, stick to the ethos of the show. And it's funny because so this episode came out, and then I worked on an episode for friends of the show and former guests Laura Summers and Katie Gagel for their show Adopting Wellness, where Laura talks about this exact same thing.
Whoa.
And a little bit different and a little bit of a different way. And I said that I wanted to talk more about the illusion real quick because I wanted to add this. Because after I explained my thing and she listened to my episode, she talked about that the illusion of that burden of responsibility, like for some people it is really real. Like the burden is real because of the like emotional or mental abuse or just any kind of abuse that they might have suffered that has put them in a position to feel like they have to do that. And like that stuff is real, and didn't want it to feel like when I talk about an illusion, it's invalidating that. And so I just wanted to clarify if somebody is still with us at an hour and a half, that the illusion itself is the burden. The stuff that you feel because of it, like even when you've been manipulated psychologically and mentally and emotionally, like it's to feed into the burden of like being responsible to manage those people's feelings. But that manipulation and that trauma is very, very real. And so that was just a clarification I wanted to make. But like, I highly suggest listening to Laura's episode. I think she talks about it more eloquently than I did when it comes to that, because she's had that relationship like with her adoptive parents as well, and having to navigate that. And I just thought it was really ironic, or not ironic, but I just thought it was really funny that we just had a similar conversation drop at the same time, even though I think they might have recorded theirs well before mine, and just had not put out an episode yet, or for a while. But yeah, it was a good thing to unpack, because I've been talking about it outside of the adoptee context and just like children and parents in general, of feeling like you have to take care of you're responsible for the way that your parents feel about something that you do, and you like then can't be yourself because you're trying to manage those people. Yep. Leah, why did you think that people might have voted for this one?
Because I feel like maybe adoptees out there feel this burden, even though you are not responsible. I'm saying this to myself too. If I ever go back into the hole, you are not responsible for managing your parents' feelings. Yeah, we could get into it, but we're already an hour and a half in, and he'll have to have me come back on another time.
We'll have you back on another time, for sure.
I do want to say, though, that you did mention that there is virtually sometimes no room for and but it's people believe it's like a seemingly either or, like black or white, but it's a both and. Like with all of the adoptee complexities, it's not, I dislike this one thing that I have been parented to believe.
Right.
But also
it's
not either or.
Yeah, it's not operating on a binary. And I think if we keep trying to do that, keep trying to force that, we're only going to end up even more frustrated and confused.
Well, and it can that really like drives a wedge between the community. And it like pushes people to different sides, and like there you run into a lot of problems. And at the end of the day, like you said in the other episode, or like you said in this episode, you know, like can only speak from my own experience. So even when I give advice, it's like, okay, this is what it worked for me, but that's may not work for you. So
exactly
all I can do is speak from that specific experience. But I appreciate your thoughts on that. Definitely things I will take into account as I do further solo episodes. But that is year number 2. The burden of responsibility and the end of November. And how fitting to be at the end of November as we move to our number 1 episode as voted on by you, the listeners of Conversation Piece for 2023. It is The Privilege of Storytelling with June Park. You may know him as JS Park 3000 on Instagram. June has been a very good friend of mine for a while now after connecting online and meeting in person a couple times. And really grateful that he would be able to sit down and have this conversation. Quick synopsis. On this week's episode of Conversation Piece, Patrick sits down with June Park to discuss the privilege of telling our stories and being on the receiving end of others. June talks about the roots of his love for storytelling, what he's learned about of the power and privilege of our stories and his role as a hospital chaplain, and how silence can be a powerful tool for uplifting and elevating the stories of other people, particularly folks from historically marginalized communities and identities. They also get into a compliment off. It's a lot of fun. This is your number 1 episode as voted on by y'all, the listeners. One of my favorite conversations that I was able to have this year on the show. Y'all, what did you think of our number 1 episode? What were your thoughts and takeaways as you listened?
Leah, go ahead.
Leah's been chomping at the bit.
Yeah, you've been chomping at the bit for this one.
I admire him so much. So much. So when I saw that he was a guest, I knew that I actually really needed to sit down and listen to it, because often whenever I listen to the Janchi or like any podcast, I will start it and then I will stop it and then forget about it for like months at a time and then have to come back and restart it again. Nice. But this one I actually listened to in its entirety. And then I even came back and re-listened to it like this week or so. And I loved that he said that we want so badly for others to see what we see. Because it just made me, even though he is not an adoptee himself, it just made me think about like the adoptee consciousness, or coming out of the fog, or post-apocalyptic, whichever mode you want to, identify with or whatever. Because I know for me, for what seemed like the longest time, I wanted all of these other adoptees in my life to see and feel what I felt regarding the adoptee identity and regarding like stop AAPI hate and everything that was going on. But ultimately some people might not be there or ever get there, and that's okay. That's for each person to go on their own journey. But I loved the amount of grief that he absorbs on the daily, because he is a hospital chaplain, and yet he still has such a gentle spirit, is I think the ultimate like probably why people like still voted on him, because just he, with the storytelling, he lets us know that we're not alone in like sadness and grief. Yes, it was good. That was a word jumble. I like how I was so confident that I had. Yes, but it was great. Erik?
I'm here for it. I'm here for it
too. I guess my initial thoughts and takeaways was, once again, piggybacking off of what Leah's kind of already said, was that he's an incredible speaker and conversationalist. very well spoken. I mean, I think that just kind of comes with the job. But also, how often do you get to hear from a chaplain, a hospital chaplain? Like that's a very unique life experience. Leah, you mentioned kind of like how some quotes were kind of like popping out to you. One for me was storytelling is a way of taking care of each other. I really enjoyed that. And there's and how he talked about there's always more in somebody's story if you just hold that space and be patient in your own silence, and you'll always get more of that story. And if not, then what is that silence or that beat between the two people? What does that mean? That's going to carry significance. He also mentioned, and this made me actually kind of feel a little bit self-conscious, was that vulnerability is being commodified. And I feel like that's something that I've been thinking a lot about in starting my own podcast, and just a personal podcast. It's like, am I commodifying my own vulnerability here? Patrick, I think you and I talked about this offline, was like, are we giving too much of ourselves away when we do these things, when we leave ourselves so vulnerable? I think also too, he mentioned how there's these traps that we fall into, how we moralize or judge somebody for our own growth, and how, especially in AAPI communities, how there's a lot of gatekeeping amongst minority groups and in general, of kind of like Mount assimilation, right? Is that we either gatekeep them, right? It's like, no, you're going to have to put in the work to get to where I'm at. Or it's the opposite, where we rush people and they're not ready for it. And I really kind of loved how he framed that with, a mountain, and how we feel like we've reached a peak, and instead of kind of holding the space for them to figure it out on their own and give them tools and resources. So what do you say? Good intention with rushed hands, right?
Yeah.
And I guess kind of just final thought on and takeaway was that, and this is something that I've been wrestling around with too, was that he said we still need that rage and we still need the sorrow. Oh, and I mean, those were some very beautiful words that came out of his mouth, and I thought that was very affirming for myself, who's felt angry and felt sad, in many times in my life, and didn't know why, and felt I was still justified in those emotions, but just never had the tools to figure out, or what he said, the silence, right, to take a beat, to figure out, and navigate those feelings, and figure out what it is that we're after. What is the aim here? So just kind of being angry and aimless is no way to go through life. Trust me, I've done it. So
yeah, but it's easy to do when you don't have a support system, or when people aren't giving you, that silence, or helping to elevate or amplify or just even validate your story.
Right.
When you're trying to express something. Again, it goes back to that number 2 episode about feeling the burden of taking care of other people at the expense of yourself. And it goes back to even Jamie's episode number 3 about not taking care of yourself first, and going out on a limb to people please, because we can derive, a dopamine hit, a bit of satisfaction from helping others. But at the same time, we're limiting ourselves in how far we can go, because we're not taking care of ourselves in that way. And love just listening to June talk, because he is just a powerful speaker, eloquent speaker. He's got multiple books out that people are buying, and everything that you see that he shares online, I feel like just generates so much positive response. And even he goes through these things where, people take the wrong message or something away from something that he shares, and he finds a way to gracefully deal with it. But it doesn't mean that he isn't able to also feel angry, to also feel the sorrow that's generated from interactions like that. And I think I said on the episode, but like him and Cam, who you mentioned earlier, are 2 people that I really learn a lot from, in terms of like, how do you deal with the negative interaction? How do you deal with the rage and the hopelessness at times, it's around you? And how do you not fall into that trap. And at the end of the day, sometimes you fall in and you're going to feel those things. And it doesn't mean these other feelings can't exist or that you can't figure out how to move forward with them. Leah, you have something to say?
Feeling. I'm glad you mentioned Cam again, because he also is someone who just seems to have such a gentle spirit and very like calming presence, which every time I see an adoptee be real gracious toward people on the internet who I may not think deserves grace, they give it. Because just truly in my nature, I'm like, wow, if you were a jerk, then you are a jerk, and get out of my way. No time for you. I did have something to say regarding June, but I kind of forgot it because I admittedly found the raise your hand feature and got distracted by that. But I do have a little bullet point that I did not mention earlier, was that I think he also provides just a lot of language regarding what it means or what it can mean to be a Christian these days, and addressing church trauma and church hurt, which I personally just really admire and like love listening to his perspective about as well.
That kind of speaks to how humanistic he is, and how wholesome you two were with each other in that compliment war. But no, I think there was some natural chemistry there as well, and familiarity. I kind of want to go back to the whole storytelling element about how he acknowledges that we can't avoid the stats, we can't avoid the data, and rather, this ties into humanity, is that we're amplifying the humanity and the soul of these stories.
Right.
We can't forget, like, especially being a hospital chaplain, I can only imagine, like, we had another one on the gurney, whatever. Like, it can be very grim. And you can start looking at the stats and the data and like, the outlooks of and using that as an outlook, and rather not kind of hearing more about each other's stories and how he kind of like, navigates that very delightful line of, I shouldn't say delightful, I meant delicate, delicate line of ambiguity. I love ambiguity, so that's why I think it's delightful. But navigating that ambiguity, right, with the people that he interacts with, because that is a tough job. That is a really tough job.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, right. And then Leah, you mentioned kind of like, the language for, church hurt, right? In growing up Mormon myself, right, there's a lot of hurt there. And Cam as well, I want to acknowledge Cam. I want to get some words in on Cam. Was that, he's because I got to talk with him. We separated some time out and we got to talk with each other. And I think you're in good company when you're talking about Cam and talking about June.
100%.
And I think that's where, as Cam a therapist, and then this guy, June a chaplain. This guy over here.
This guy.
Sorry, when you guys were like, I didn't know whether I was going to call him JS or June. Thanks, Leah. No, all I'm saying is that when you're listening to these guys talk, and they do it with such grace and empathy, and in a weird way, like this very passive way. I don't want to say passive, but like
somber.
What am I trying to say? Yeah, in a way, somber or just very peacefully quiet in a way. I don't know how to describe it.
Like measured. It's like a measured,
gentle
tone.
Very gentle. And I think from a masculine perspective, I think that's very refreshing. And being able to hold grace for those that, we were like, I don't think he deserves it, is a great point, Leah. So I just kind of wanted to applaud you for that.
Applause.
Applause.
Wait.
Yeah. Where'd you get that soundbite from? It sounds like Dora the Explorer.
Shout out KJ. KJ, and Nathan. I guess we'll yell Nathan's name too. Yeah, I appreciate you both sharing that. I feel like all the same ways about June. I think one of the reasons that I loved our conversation so much and why I was happy to see it at the top was that it felt like one of the first times that I really found myself in a conversation as opposed to an interview. And just the way that he navigates an answer and like, and again, that's why the title is like the privilege of storytelling, because like, you know, you keep talking about his work as a chaplain and in the hospital, no less. And like everything that you see and experience there is compounded by all of the family that you have to interact with as you're going through this grief process. And I think that is just incredible to be able to articulate like how that's still a privilege and not like a burden. And then like going to the statistic thing, you know, his ability to see beyond each number is a full life lived, you know, and be willing to not extract that story, but facilitate it if he can, you know, if he has the opportunity to, and to really honor like the individual's wishes, you know, even at the expense of maybe his own peace and comfort with having to talk to the family who is wanting to do something different in his case as a chaplain. So I just really appreciate every chance and opportunity to get to have a conversation with him, because it's just like I can only help but learn, you know, and take something away from that. And I think, again, that's just like this particular conversation just really reinforced this idea of how we can just be a little bit more mindful, look a little bit more deeply at the people that we're talking to and interacting with and the people around them, and see those ties and just know that all of these things can exist at the same time, particularly the ways that they might make you feel. And yeah, just a really fantastic episode. I think I can see why people would vote it to the top. Not least of all, him being one of the most well-known people that I've had on the show in 2023. So that makes sense. But yeah. Well,
I also think that you, Patrick, understand the privilege of storytelling yourself because of all of the people that you've met through the pod, have had on the pod, or just like have had like in-person conversations, or people I'm sure in your DMs just saying, man, this one post resonated with me, or whatever.
Yeah, I've been really lucky, and it has been a really big privilege. You know, I haven't had any other opportunity than to learn that, especially through the Janchi Show, but then also now doing this show, just like how lucky I am to be able to do this, and that people would trust us and now me to be able to share their story, you know, in whatever way they want.
Yeah, can you believe that? I guess it was this year. Is that when you left your job and started doing this full time?
So technically December of last year. So technically it has been a year now.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Is it going the way that you thought it would be going?
No.
Okay. I don't know if that's a
going
good
in
no.
a direction. It's like it's like a thing that you know, that what the privilege of storytelling with June Park, your number one episode. Shout out to everybody who voted. Shout out to everybody who took the time to listen to an episode, or at least 5 episodes this year, to then pick 5 episodes that they will want to vote on in the top 5. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. And to kind of wrap it up, just in a continuation of this conversation, like when I started all of this, when I started Conversation Piece, it was so I could have full creative control over my own thing. And it was just like, I want to talk to whoever about whatever they want to talk about, and that's all we're going to talk about. And that's how it was until April of 2023. And then I was like, I should have been more business minded, more idea, and had a more like central focus of what the show was going to be about, which is when we switched to the conversations, the missing pieces of the conversations we were already having. And so there I found like a focus. But then as I was doing all of this, I was really looking at goals, like downloads, like number of interactions, subscribers to the newsletter, plays on YouTube, whatever the case may be. I was looking at these goals, and the numbers never were where I wanted them to be. And I recently started watching a lot of like YouTube creators and stuff, just thinking about, different avenues that I can do work in. And I watched a bunch of videos about the importance of the system versus the result. And so, like, I've been so focused on the results that I have not, like, I do a lot of work on the show. Like, this takes up like almost all of my time, even more time than I put into the Janchi Show. Shout out to Janchi Show. But what I hadn't really thought about before was thinking about it as a system. I was only as a means to the end of like, this is what I'm so focused on this goal. And there was a certain point in time where I wasn't like enjoying it. And I think that came about like coming back from Korea, going through all my own personal stuff and going to therapy that really helped me kind of get to this point of like self-love for my own identity. But reaching that point and now watching some of these things about like the importance of their process and your system and finding and deriving joy from that and being focused on building the craft and not so much thinking about why don't I have 10,000 listens on this one episode has helped me understand this is where I want to go and that I want to be doing this show for 6-7 years in the form that I want to do it in, as opposed to being like, if I don't hit X in 2024, then all hell breaks loose. There are obviously things that I need to do to be able to sustain and build sustainability. There are other avenues that I'm pursuing for stuff like that. But at the end of the day, when it comes to like what it means to be successful for the podcast, I've had to like rethink that. And it's like kind of I build a system that works for me, that I enjoy doing, that I can come back to every week. And I think I've finally found that stride that I'm working towards now. And that's all going to change in February when we have this kid. So I don't know what that's going to look like. But I think even through these 5 episodes, that's something that I think about. And then listening to y'all's feedback and thinking about my own experience hosting or interviewing these people or just doing the solo show is thinking about how they fit into the system differently. And how even like Jamie's episode being number 3 could have been number 5 because of the way the votes landed out. But this is just how I picked them out. Is like that was me at my freshest in terms of the system that I'm finally finding myself in now, from like a solo episode standpoint, or the episode that came out with Lillian, like doing some more stuff in person, like finding different ways to do the show. Is really a shift in that mindset. And I think each of those things, I took something from each of those episodes and conversations that I've used to hone the system. And now I'm finally taking the steps to be like, okay, I have goals, but I'm going to work on this thing here that will eventually allow me to reach those things whenever that is. And so that's my biggest takeaway. And that's the thing that I'm taking into, I asked you before, what's one thing you're working on in 2024? Like, that's the thing that I'm working on, is like really keeping focus here on the process and the system and continuing to show up and be consistent.
Oh, yeah.
And then the results will come as they come.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
And when we were in Los Angeles, you shared while we were hanging out at the Prince, some of those like bigger dreams and goals. And that is just so exciting to hear you talk about the system and furthering the dream.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
I know we had separate conversations, Patrick, where it's like, gosh, I'm really frustrated over this process. What am I doing?
Right.
Starting to question yourself. And, I never saw you more excited when you were talking about, getting involved with your local community, really raising, really building community there. And also too, like you have a lot of life challenges and obstacles ahead of you. And so I think this is something that I've kept saying to you, is that so long as you're in pursuit of that thesis, right?
Yeah.
Find your thesis. And I think you're very close, if not already finding it as you're going along. And so proud of you, brother. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for kind of facilitating this. And this was so much fun. It really was.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And we have had those conversations, and we've had multiple conversations where I'm like down in the dumps. I'm like, I gotta complain about something. So I appreciate you being there for that. You know, the ride or die when I'm in LA, but also just the dude willing to listen and shoot the shit and bounce those ideas off and grow and build and be in community together. Means a lot.
Absolutely. Means the world.
Yeah, 100%. Leah, it means a lot to have you on the show too. We've had, actually after our workshop, we had a really good conversation. And I appreciate every moment that I have that we're able to have conversations like that. So thank you. Thank you for being on the show and being a part of this.
Of course. I love getting to chat with you and hang out.
Yeah. Well, as
and
we
truly,
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, and truly, to anyone who's like listening to Patrick day in and day out, or maybe once or twice, he is the guy that you see on like offline. And that was just great to know that he's not, that sounds so bad. He's not a weirdo, but he is genuine. He is genuine.
He is the guy that when you drive 6 hours to go meet him, he's gonna be the same guy. And I think right?
I appreciate
Leah,
that.
am I touching on that?
Yeah,
he's that, you know, and
he's a good guy.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about like how I know we should wrap this up, but it's the authenticity, right? It's the genuineness of all of it.
Yeah.
I think that's what people appreciate, and I think that the world needs more of.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you both for saying those things. Just for the listeners to know at home, I'm not holding a sign up that says compliment me to them. That was totally unprompted compliments. So I appreciate those. And I appreciate y'all. And as we have rolled over the 2-hour mark, I appreciate you sitting down to have this extended full length holiday spectacular best of episodes episode. It just means a lot that you would sit here and have this conversation with me because I wasn't sure what this was going to be and I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. And I would do a podcast with you two where we just talk about all that stuff we talked about at the beginning, like basements versus storm shelters. That's a whole series of episodes in itself, is basements and storm shelters. And we can talk about
maybe we don't have to talk about that and we could talk about something else, but I'm so there.
Well, we'll see. That'll be an episode that we talk about something like that. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to wrap it up because it has been 2 hours and I don't want to take up any more of your time. Again, I appreciate you both. It really means a lot that you were here for this conversation and to help me close out 2023 with a loud bang bang. It's been a great one. For everybody out there listening, if you want to give us one more review before 2023 is over, we greatly appreciate that wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. We'd love if you could subscribe to us on YouTube as well. That'd be great. If you want to connect with me, you can do so at Patrick in the World on Instagram. You can do so with the show at Conversation Pod Peace on Instagram as well. What about you two? Where can people follow, find, connect, communicate with you if you want them to?
I am on Instagram at Lee _ real original, but I'm very proud of it. Very proud of it. No one else has it.
I like the way you read it off. Lee.
Yeah. It's
Love
2
that.
H's, just to let people know. That sounded like 5, but it's only 2.
Yeah, thank you.
One U, right? 1 U, 2 H's.
Yeah,
Yep.
you guys are right. Yeah, thank you.
And 2 E's.
had to think about it. Mm-hmm.
You mean it's not Lay?
Oh my
I don't think so. It might
gosh,
be.
let me tell you. It is Leah.
Love it. Say it with gumption. People can find me on Instagram at Kempbop, so KEMPBOP. And you can also find my new podcast that should be launching. Oh my gosh, I'm actually telling people that when it's going to launch on your podcast for the first time.
Exclusive.
Yep, it makes it real and forcing me to do it. We'll be in the new year, 2024. January. So
okay. I was like, it's just in 2024. That gives you a lot of time.
I was like,
Yes,
okay.
it's 2024. Just listen. Just keep track of it. And
December 22nd,
if you want
2024.
I don't have a specific date. I'm really gonna try to, but I will kind of release the first 4 episodes in January, first week. So that way it gives you time to listen, figure out if you want to keep listening or not. And if you want to follow that account, it's just Erik talking. So very simple, very minimalistic in that certain sense. And it'll be a personal podcast of me just rambling, like I'm doing right now on my buddy's podcast instead of my own.
Love it. Also, I guess if people are interested in my Bookstagram, sometimes I do post there. It is at Leah Reads, but the S is actually a Z.
What about a book podcast, Leah? What about a book podcast? Like a book club?
Yeah, if I can't commit to a book Instagram, I cannot commit to a book podcast.
What if you had like a book club podcast where you had other people holding you accountable? No?
Nah. I'm good with the Bookstagram.
Okay.
We'll talk about it. We'll have all of those things linked in the show notes so people can click on them and connect with you and find them. Real excited for your podcast, Erik. Excited to start listening. Excited to hear. Excited to get these first 4 episodes in my veins. Shoot them up directly into me. For people who want to shoot up directly into this podcast, you can do so at our website, conversationpeacepod.com. And what else do I say at the end of this episode? I don't really think there's links. There's going to be links to all the episodes, your top 5 that we talked about. There'll be links to those. Leah, you help me out.
I'm in a high five.
I think you usually say, I appreciate y'all, bye, or something like that.
I do say that a lot in every episode, how much I appreciate everyone. But yeah, that's about it. I appreciate you if you're still here 2 hours and 7 minutes later. It means a lot. It means a lot that these two are still here with me, but we are going to close it out. Just want to quickly remind you, subscribe to the newsletter, Conversation Piece, the newsletter. It will still be coming out on Mondays. New episodes of the show, Conversation Piece, will be dropping on Tuesdays in the new year. And episodes of Conversation Notes will still come out on Wednesdays. So if you want to get a hold of all of that, the best way to do so is become a paid subscriber on our newsletter, Substack, Patreon, no, not Patreon, patrickintheworld.substack.com. You can join Conversation Piece, the newsletter, and have all the fun with all the people. Really excited for this first episode of the new year. I believe I'm going to have a guest. So I'm just going to leave you with that little tease. And for all of us here on this show right now, for Conversation Piece as a whole, I am the titular Patrick. It's been a wonderful 2023, and I'll see you in 2024.
Bye.
Bye. Have us back, please.